So what is Yalda? Why do we get together in this night as a tradition in Iran? This is a night that we're waiting for light. So we don't want to sleep. We stay awake, we tell stories, because it's the longest night of the year, where the evil himself is at a peak of power. And from tomorrow, the God, the light, is born. It comes from a very, very old Iranian tradition, possibly Mithraism, that is way longer than any other known religion that we know around. The idea of light versus darkness. And our ancestors looked at the sky, measured the days, measured the nights. It was important for them to know when the darkness loses and the suffering ends. And so they can celebrate. So that's why we celebrate tonight. We celebrate because the light is coming. The suffering is ending. A new day is opening. Now, in other traditions, other religions, there's similar love for the light. I think every one of us knows that a few days from now, a few nights from now, the sun is born. The God is born. In the Christian tradition. And there are 3 Persians in the Bible that they go all the way to Jerusalem. They go all the way to Palestine to bring gifts. Because there is something in Persia that knows that someone is going to be born who's going to change the world, who is from the essence of light. And then there in the commentaries of the Torah, in the Talmud, that Adam, the first man, as the nights got longer and longer, he felt upset, he thought that life is ending, and he started fasting and praying. Until he realized the nights are getting shorter, which is tomorrow. Not tomorrow, the day after. Day. And he started festivities for many days, and that became the tradition of his. So this is an important tradition. If you come with a heavy heart, if your life is a bit difficult, like these long nights, this is a hope that things are going to get better. And this was the Persian way that we kept even though we became Muslim. But we did not let go of this beautiful tradition of light and darkness, same as we kept our Nowruz quite alive in our hearts. Tonight I'd like to tell you a story of Rostam and Sohrab, the epic of Shahnameh. How many of you know the story already? Tell me. No, more than 2. Yeah, there are a few that I already know, they know it. I read you a little bit of the original verses in Farsi. Thank you for telling me you don't know that story. I'm not going to reveal your identity. I can't, by all means. I warned my friend, I said, you sit down here, I'm going to go ahead with you. Who is Ferdowsi? And I don't want to bore you, most of you know, but for those who don't. He was alive around 1,000 some years ago. And I was blessed to read the entire story of Rostam Sohrab on my airplane flight within an hour and a half. I was so happy that I could read the original and not even have to go to the dictionary even once. So his language is so clear and beautiful in Farsi, and we still speak that language. 1,000 years passed, and this is the miracle of Rumi, of Ferdowsi. Forgive me. Ferdowsi at the end of his work says, بسی رنج بردم در این سال سی عجم زنده کردم بدین پارسی از این پس نمیرم که من زندم که تخم سخن را پراکندم. Says I suffered for 30 years, and in this suffering I gave life, I gave birth to this language in my work of art. From today I will not die, because I spread the language that will never die. And through that I am everlasting. Palaces will be destroyed by the power of wind, wars, and water. And this is how we really feel, even we are half Persian or complete Persian, or love Persia. This is how we feel about Ferdowsi. He's the father of Farsi, of Persian as a language. And I tell you why, because the way he created his stories are so easy to read and to perform, and so beautiful to the ear, that it immediately became the Hollywood of Iran. So people would gather in places like this. And we had this tradition of Naqali that started to die right after the advent of TV and cinema. There would be a guy standing here and telling you the story of Rostam and Sohrab. And through that, a lot of wise words, a lot of history. And you would go home to sleep happily because you know a story more. There will be beautiful paintings of miniature in that place. That he would go through the battles, and the battles are described in details. Tonight I'm not going to go to do that. It will take very long to go through the whole story. I tell you a brief part of it. But the point is, this is how the language stays alive. Because his poems were read everywhere. Even when Iran is conquered by a Turkish king, Sultan Mahmoud Vahedian, that their extensions with Seljuqian, later on they become the Ottoman Turks and that empire. And this guy didn't really like things written in Farsi. But one of the days in the battlefield, when his troops were retreating, even though he also refused to pay Ferdowsi for this work, because that's how it was, the kings would pay for the work of a man who lost everything and spent all his life composing. In this battlefield, when his troops were retreating, someone started to read the poem of Ferdowsi, and everyone ran back to the battlefield feeling like they are Rostam, and this is a dishonor to put your back on the battlefield. So Sultan Mahmud asks, whose poem is that? And he had many poets in his kingdom. He thought maybe he's one of the paid ones. and he hears the word Ferdowsi. So he says, no, send him 30,000 coins of gold. As every verse was a coin of gold. Because it unites my army. It unites a nation. To not put their back on their enemy. To fight with honor. And as this money comes to Tus, it's a small little village next to my hometown in Khorasan, eastern Iran. It's a 15 minutes drive from my home. I visit it often when I'm there. So the 30,000 coins of gold arise from one of the gates of the city. From the other gate, Ferdowsi's body is going to be buried by a few lovers of him, a few followers of him. Possibly one of them was an Abbal, was a person who was telling the stories in the cafes. Because the Muslim rulers of Tus would not allow his body to be buried in the Muslim cemetery. And he had no money left. He sold all his lands. He was born rich. To buy the old stories of ancient Persia so he can create these stories in poetry. So he never got to touch the gold. But he left golden lines for us. The lines like a foundation on which Hafiz, Sa'di, and Rumi eventually create their work. Now they do not have to worry about the strength of the language. The language is already there. Few hundred years prior, Rumi was born. Ferdowsi did it. Now they add layers of meaning. Is it a long introduction? Oh my God.